I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am here, I am here, I am here. I know who you are in truth. I know what you are in truth. I know how you serve in truth. You are here, you are here, you are here. We know who we are in truth. We know what we are in truth. We know how we serve in truth. We are free. We are free. We are free.
Do you ever find yourself asking what's wrong with the world? Have you ever considered that there's something wrong with the world? Might just be a story, someone else's story, born in fear and confusion. And if that were true, then maybe the only reason that you've been operating from that place yourself is because you saw and heard other people doing it. If this world were a playground, then the ways we live would be the games that we play. And the rules of those games are the beliefs we're holding on to when we play. So today I'm going to talk about cosmology, not as some abstract theory, but as the invisible engine that runs your life. Your cosmology is the sum total of everything you believe about the world, about life, humanity, and yourself. And most of it you didn't choose, not consciously anyway. You downloaded it because at the time, on some level, you thought it was useful. Maybe it was the only thing that you saw available to you that seemed viable. We can compassionate the child who believes I'm not good enough or life is hard and recognize that they were doing what they thought was best with the knowledge they had at the time. Let's look at some common limiting beliefs and the types of experiences that one might have when they're holding that belief. I have to earn my worth. This one is everywhere, from childhood gold stars to corporate ladders. It's baked into school, religion, capitalism. It's this idea that you are fundamentally unworthy until you prove otherwise. And when you carry this belief, it's as though every moment is a performance. Rest feels like an indulgence. And even your kindness has this sharp edge of obligation. You say yes when you really mean no. You overgive, overwork, overthink, trying to buy your right to be here by bending over backwards to appease people who you think might validate you. And the cost of this belief is that you deny the reality of your innate worth, the worthiness that's already here, already in you by virtue of your existence. Not because you did something, but because you are inherently valuable. How about this one? If I don't control everything, It'll all fall apart. To a lot of people, this sounds like responsible, mature. Some might even say heroic. But under the surface, it's just soaked in fear. It assumes the universe is fundamentally hostile, that chaos is always waiting to strike, and that the only way to stay safe is to grip the wheel with white knuckles forever. So you micromanage, you future trip, you replay conversations and endlessly imagine worst case scenarios under the guise of being prepared. But what this belief actually creates is a life of hypervigilance, perpetual exhaustion and anxiety, a chronic tension that doesn't ever really seem to ease up. And it comes with this tragic inability to receive help or witness how much life is actually moving to support you and will support you when you stop demanding to shoulder the world alone. Last one. If I'm too different, I'll be abandoned. This one runs deep. It's primal, ancestral, born from lifetimes when exile meant death. But in the modern world, this looks like self-censorship, compulsive and relentless masking, pretending to be less magical, less fierce, less bold than you really are. To try not to make any waves, you hide your gifts, your instincts, your fire. You become a master of fitting in even when it hurts a lot. But the truth is that your uniqueness is the very thing that you were born to embody. These kinds of beliefs have historically been quite common, prevalent throughout the cosmologies of many people from many walks of life. These are lenses that have been propagated through society and culture for generations, and they generate real experiences: anxiety, illness, chronic stress, a life that almost seems to work, but always feels uncomfortable. It's like wearing someone else's shoes that are 3 sizes too small for you. And when you trace these ideas back to their roots, you find that they're not just personal. They come from the cosmology that was handed down to you, a map of reality that taught you you are alone, you must prove your worth, love is conditional, safety is external, and true power belongs to someone else. But I invite you to ask yourself, does anyone benefit from these beliefs? So today, we're going to walk right into it, not to debate some alleged objective reality out there, but instead to feel into and explore what's really going on in your world and to discover that actually you're the one pulling strings behind the curtain so fast that you don't even notice. And by the end of this talk, if I do my job right, you'll have a simple process to get clarity about what you want. Notice what's been interfering with that and let go of beliefs that don't belong to you anymore. Because truth be told, they never did. You borrowed them. There are many existing cosmologies, from the oldest ones that most historians would cite, like Sumerian or Egyptian, and probably many that are older but less well known or well documented, all the way to contemporary cosmologies like hard materialism and academic scientism as a whole, atheism, pop Gnosticism, pop spirituality. There's this buffet of existing ideas about reality for you to fill your plate with. And you probably have sampled from more than one, trying to find something that works for you, something that you can digest, that nourishes you. And maybe you have found that. If so, right on. If your cosmology is working out for you in a way that you like, then by all means, keep it going. But even if that's the case, what I'm presenting here is still useful for you because it will help you to see places in your map that you could consider looking at differently to be more supportive of what you really want. Most people think that cosmology is some hierarchical sky map, a set of origin myths, but it's much deeper than that. Your cosmology is the invisible compass in your life. It's the story behind every story you tell yourself. Your cosmology determines what you think is real, what you believe is possible, and what you assume is safe. And you, like all of us, inherited at least some, but probably most of the one that you've been using from school, from government, from media, from parents or guardians who meant well, but were steeped in fear, from cultures built on separation and domination, telling you that life is a struggle, that you're separate and vulnerable, and that God is somewhere else, being picky about who gets to have true fulfillment, and that suffering is just the price that you pay for your life. But what if none of that is true? What if your entire belief system is up for revision? I'm proposing to you that it is. And the moment that you start to question it, really question it, you crack open the door to your freedom, a door that's always been there, but had been caulked shut because the beliefs that you were holding couldn't reconcile what's on the other side of that door. And you'll notice that you've been living inside a worldview that wasn't ever really directly intended to support your dreams. And you'll notice that your life can be built on something else, something more honest, more coherent, more supportive of what you truly desire. There comes, in the course of our lives, moments of clarity, sometimes more of a slow dissolve, moments when you realize that you've been living in a story that you didn't really write, not consciously anyway, a story that doesn't even really fit you like it once did. And maybe it didn't ever really fit, but it was familiar. And that familiarity gave it substance for you, gave you the torque that you needed to keep going, keep growing. Maybe you find yourself mouthing lines like this sometimes, like, life is hard. Gotta earn my keep. And what I really want is probably not in the cards for me. As if repetition will make these ideas a little more bearable, a little less burdensome. But there comes a time, and maybe for you that's right now, when the script you've been holding begins to fall apart in your hands. That's when the big questions show up. What if this world is not opposed to, but actually in favor of, true fulfillment? What if life is not conspiring against me, but for and with me? What if I'm not actually falling behind, but I have been taking my sweet ass time coming around to the possibility, no, the inevitability of the life that I actually want to live, the world that I came here to build with my own heart, mind, and hands? What if the rules I inherited, the ones that I've been sleepily abiding, weren't ever meant for someone like me, the real me, the true self, who is actually here now, waiting ever so patiently for me to get the fuck out of my own way? And it's in these moments when you realize your beliefs are not just thoughts, they're architecture. Every belief that you hold lays down structure in your experience, walls, floors, ceilings, and sometimes what looks a lot like cages. You don't just live with beliefs, you live inside them. And your life has been shaped by blueprints that you agreed to only because you hadn't yet learned how to access your own infinite, unconditional inner resources. Resources like peace, love, freedom, and joy. Here's a few lines from the cosmology that I used to impose on myself. I used to believe that hard work was the price of love, that spiritual people shouldn't care about money, that you only become worthy by fixing what's wrong. I used to believe there was something wrong with me, with the world, the other people, with the the universe as a whole. And you know what kind of experiences those beliefs generated? Struggle, shame and guilt, burnout, resentment, suffering and pain, so much pain. A daily dish of internalized oppression with a side of scarcity. You probably know people that are living out patterns like that. Maybe you've been one of them. I used to be until I sat down and really questioned what I was building my life on. And more importantly, I started asking what else is possible. So I began to write down what I then sincerely thought was going on, the story that I was telling myself. And I started to point to each claim that I'd written and ask myself sincerely, earnestly, what kind of universe would I have to live in for this to be true? And when I really listened, I found that I was fooling myself. These lines of code were running a program that denied the truth of my direct experience. I am here. I exist. How how could any of these beliefs be true? How could this cosmology that I've been working with actually be valid? If here I am, by the grace of God or source, whatever is behind all of this, how could I possibly be here now looking this shit square in the face and questioning it if what I've been believing is actually true? And I found that it could not possibly be. In that recognition, the structures I had held for decades began to dissolve. And I began to see clearly that I had been, in my fear and in my confusion, weaving these yarns and pulling this wool over my own eyes in my sleep. And as I began to pull those threads, I found that they were just symbols. They're just sounds and images that we can play with and knit sweaters out of that hold no meaning of their own. That was the pivot for me. It wasn't a perfect 180. It was more like a slow reveal, a quiet maybe whispered through the cracks of the old system. Maybe no one, no thing outside me is doing this to me. Maybe I'm doing this to myself. And maybe there is no objective map. Maybe the map itself needs to distort, delete, and generalize the territory in order to be workable and useful. Like you can't have a map the same size as the territory. It'd be useless. So maybe I've been using a map largely made by other people whose relationship with the universe, whose direct experience was not the same as mine and hasn't ever really made sense to me. But maybe I can now begin to examine these structures I've been using and whether they at all resemble the kind of infrastructure that would support the world I actually want to live in. And that's exactly what I did. I remodeled my cosmology piece by piece from a deep curiosity about what could be true if instead of insisting that things must mean what I've been saying they mean, I instead let my experience be what it actually is, here and now. So for this exploration, you'll want to have paper and something to write with. And this recording will be published on YouTube, so it's okay if you can't do this exercise right now. But like many of the things that I teach, it can be helpful to be walked through it the first time. So the first thing to ask yourself is, what do I really want? And then you write down everything that comes up. If you've never asked yourself this and written down your answers before, I am excited for you because what you really want is the most important thing for you to know. You don't have to try to articulate some supreme spiritual desire. It's fine if you want to do that, but the main thing with this is to start identifying the intentions that you have for your life, the experiences and circumstances that you would like to have. And as you write these things down, notice how you feel when you think about them. Feels good, right? If it doesn't feel good to imagine what you want, take note of that because this process that we're going to walk through will help you resolve that as well. So as you're compiling this list of things that you want, experiences, circumstances, and so on, notice if any of these are negative in the sense of being the absence of something. Because if you're thinking that you want to be rid of something or be free of something, you're not focused on what you want. You're focused on what you don't want. So in those kinds of situations, you can ask yourself, what do I want instead? And write down the answer. This is a living list. You might add to, remove from, and refine this list over time. It's it's an ongoing project to gain clarity about what you want. The way that you articulate what you want now might not be the same way that you talk about it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Some people's lists are short, some are long. It's fine either way. So as you get these things written down, focus on them one at a time and imagine those things. And if you can do that, if you can sustain your focus on what you want for a few seconds without your attention being pulled away, that's great. It could be that you don't actually have any resistance to what you want. And if that's the case, just giving your attention consistently to what you want will yield it in your experience. But if you think about what you want and something seems to block you or pull your attention away, notice that. What is it? Write it down. So you continue down this list of what you want, you focus on one thing at a time. And as you imagine having that, uh, write down anything that seems to block or otherwise pull your attention away from what you want. These are, I don't want to say always because there might be exceptions to this, but almost always these are going to be limiting beliefs or ideas that presuppose limiting beliefs. These are the parts of your cosmology that are interfering with what you want. Now, it's important when you notice interference not to go all aggro on the parts of you that are holding those limiting beliefs. Most, if not all of them, will be happy to let them go. And many or all of them will do so as soon as you see the belief for what it is, as interference, as something that is interfering with what you want. There are more involved processes for clearing limiting beliefs. I have a video that I'll link in the description when this is published that breaks down a simple but very effective method for clearing limiting beliefs. But the simplest way is and easiest is just to set the intention of releasing the limiting belief. Like, I release this limiting belief. That's all that's truly needed. Now, the question is, when you clear interference, what could be more supportive of what you want? And the tendency can be to formulate a replacement belief. And while this can be useful, it's very important to note that you don't need beliefs to have what you want. Beliefs are not inherently required. But for us mere mortals, they can be useful. I mean, trying to eliminate all beliefs is like it's like trying to swim without touching the water. It can be done, but it could take some time to become skillful at. In the meantime, we can wield beliefs like tools. We can use them when they're helpful and set them down when they're not. This is why I recommend lightly held, consciously chosen beliefs that are supportive of what you want. So, to be clear, everything that I say about consciously creating beliefs is supplementary to the process as I've outlined it so far, which is complete in and of itself. All you really need to do is identify what you want and give that your attention. You can enhance your results by clearing interference. But the main thing is just to have clarity about what you want and to consistently give that your attention. Sometimes, especially with long held beliefs, there can be resistance to letting them go. The parts that have held those beliefs might have reservations, concerns about what might happen if you release those beliefs. And so for this, it can be valuable to consider framing things differently. New to you, lightly held beliefs that allow you to see more of the options that you have available to you. In truth, you always have infinite options, but we filter those through layer upon layer of belief. And yet, even while holding on to a belief, if we loosen our grip on it just a little, just for a moment, it will allow us to see more of our options, to perceive possibilities that were previously hidden. For example, if you notice something that you want and the words come up, I can't have this because XYZ. You can imagine that belief, I can't have this because XYZ, as a tight fist. And when you ask, is that really true? You can notice it's like a fist loosening up. Because if you if you ask yourself, is that really true with any of your beliefs, you'll notice that it's possible that might not be true. There are other possibilities worth considering. You can ask the part that is holding this belief what its positive intention is, and then ask that part if it's willing to continue exploring ways of achieving that positive intention that don't require this limiting belief. And more often than not, if you've already pulled back the curtain to see that indeed there are other options, The part will be happy to explore those. If the part is not open to exploring other possibilities, you can thank the part for its positive intention and let it know that you'll come back and check in with it later. And then do that until the belief is dissolved. The part will come around if you demonstrate that you're sincere. But remember, the only thing that you really need to do to release a limiting belief is to set the intention of doing so. I release this limiting belief. That's adequate. It will eventually fall away once you stop picking it back up. From the moment that you identify a limiting belief, it will become increasingly unattractive to you. Once you acknowledge that this idea that you've been holding is interfering with what you want, you will begin to taper away from it, and then you'll simply stop picking it back up. So at this point, if you've been following along, you'll have your list of desires, and you might have a separate list of interference, like limiting beliefs. And with those two lists alone, you can achieve anything. No exaggeration. Because you know what you want, you give that your attention, you identify interference. Whenever that comes up, you write it down. And then when you clear it, you cross it off or erase it, whatever, it's gone. Now there's no interference. And you just turn your attention back to what you want. The only reasons that people aren't experiencing what they want are that they don't know what they want. They don't consistently give attention to what they want, and or they're interfering with what they want. And this process that we've just walked through addresses all three. The more that you clear interference, the more clarity you gain about what you want. And the more clarity you have about what you want, the easier it is to give it your attention consistently. It's a virtuous cycle. So I said earlier that you don't need any beliefs to have what you want. And that is true, but it can be useful to hold some beliefs. Ideally, if you're going to hold any beliefs, then it's useful to have them be simple, open-ended, and for you to always hold them lightly, knowing that they're just beliefs, just ideas that you use as lenses to make sense of your experience, to navigate. And this lightly held beliefs, this is what I would call a minimum viable cosmology. I'm a little bit biased here, but some aspects of my cosmology, which I hold very lightly, feel like good candidates to use as an example. There are concepts like panpsychism and utilitarianism that get the basic point across, but just to make it more accessible, I'll share some of the beliefs that I use that are supportive of what I want, to give you an idea of what I mean by a minimum viable cosmology. I believe that the Hermetic principles are largely reliable and um, in conceptual and daily use, particularly the principles of mentalism. So this is the all is mind, the universe is mental, correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, vibration, that nothing is ever fully at rest, that everything vibrates, polarity, everything has its pair of opposites, like and unlike are the same, identical in nature but different in degree. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. And cause and effect. Every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause. Together, these principles paint a picture of a universe that is a singular cosmic mind or consciousness in which all experience occurs, wherein every bit of that universe is a reflection of the whole. This is also known as fractality, and that this universe renders all form and phenomena via vibration, polarity, and causality. I also believe that this singular cosmic mind, which I usually refer to as the holistic intelligence of the cosmos, that this singular consciousness that you are only ever does anything for the benefit of all, because all things are within it. All is self. So no matter how we might interpret our experience, I believe that everything that occurs is for our benefit, for our greatest good, because we're all inseparable parts of a singular cosmic wholeness. And what this does for me is it gives my intellect a logical model of cosmic logistics and order, a model that in no way interferes with what I want. And because there's no claims about morality, ethics, or hierarchical dogma within that model, anybody can weave any narrative they want. And if they hold that narrative sincerely, their experience will reflect it. So you might ask, okay, well, why not just say you already have what you want and have your experience reflect that? Well, I do that. Notice that when you imagine what you want, you are experiencing it. And the more that you give attention to what you want, the more you will feel inclined to orient and conduct yourself in your physical experience in ways that are supportive of that. What you want isn't out there somewhere, it's within you. Notice this when you imagine what you want, there it is within your experience. But then you might say, okay, James, but how do I get the money out of my imagination and into my wallet? By giving it your attention and not interfering with it. The exercise that I outlined and walked you through will support you in doing that. And if you're skeptical, I feel you. So check it out. The kinds of experiences that you typically have on the day to day, how often do you imagine experiences like that? And how often do you imagine what you really want? Is it clicking for you? This is this is the law of attention. Where attention goes, energy flows. Also stated, what you give your attention to grows in your experience. The types of experiences that you have are the types of experiences that you give the most attention to. And what you'll probably find doing the exercise that I laid out is that you've been obscuring what you want from your attention because the cosmology you've been using is not compatible with your desires. But what you'll also find is that the cosmology is just beliefs. They're just sounds and images held together by associations that you make. And these are choices. You can make different choices. Beliefs that you've picked up and been holding unconsciously, it's your grip on them that has kept them active. So it's the releasing of your grip that dissolves them. So as you get in the habit of every day asking yourself, what do I really want? And giving that your attention, writing it down if you don't already have it written down, focusing on that, you'll be able to then notice, write down, and dissolve any interference, anything that's blocking that. It's usually limiting beliefs. You'll be able to do that readily. You'll get more skillful at it. It'll get easier. But if you think about what you want, if you have beliefs that are interfering with that, they will present themselves. And then you can write them down and dissolve them. And then return your attention to what you want. That's that's the most critical component of this. That's how you get what you want, is you give it your attention consistently. So when you do this, when you identify interference and dissolve it, you're cleaning up your cosmology, your inner and outer world. And you'll notice the benefits of this very quickly. Your mind and body will feel more spacious and relaxed, and every aspect of your life will improve. No exaggeration. It's worth noting, though, that doing this once for an hour is not as effective as doing it consistently, even if it's just for like 1 minute a day. 10 seconds a day of giving your attention to what you want is better than none at all. And that consistency is going to give you better results than just doing like one long session of giving attention to what you want. Sincerity and consistency are key components to facilitating any kind of positive change in your life. So if you want the money, the house, the spouse, whatever the thing is, give it your attention consistently. When you do that, notice any interference, write it down, and dissolve it. And if you feel like it will be helpful, you can play around with beliefs that actually accommodate and support what you really want. But remember to hold them lightly. Know that they're just beliefs. This makes it far easier to let them go if and when you find that they're no longer serving you. Bonus with this is that because you're creating these new beliefs consciously and intentionally, then even if they habituate and become unconscious, which is a good thing, I'll explain, they'll still be easier to let go of if and when they're no longer serving you because their establishment was a conscious act. Unlike the beliefs that you took on in early childhood when you didn't have the clarity that you have now. Now, about unconsciousness being a good thing. So notice that doing things consciously takes a lot of calories. And when you do something consciously, you can't simultaneously do other things consciously. So it's very natural and useful that as we develop competence, that competence gradually becomes unconscious. Can you imagine if you're if your breathing, digestion, blood flow, temperature regulation all had to be done consciously? It would take all of your time and energy and attention just to stay alive. I don't know. I don't know if breathing was a conscious thing in the early times of our lives, but I feel like it gets the point across. I think a better example would be um walking. riding a bike, driving. Initially, if you did these things, you did so consciously. It's when one is learning how to walk, talk, or drive, they do it consciously because they haven't developed competence yet. And doing things consciously takes a lot of calories. But as you become competent at something, the activity becomes unconscious, automatic. And this drastically reduces the amount of energy and attention that's required. So habits becoming unconscious is to your benefit when those habits are supportive of what you want. Um, yeah, that's it. Hopefully all that made sense. Hopefully you found that useful because if you put this into practice, you will begin to see positive changes very quickly. Sometimes when we do this kind of work, it might seem like nothing's happened, but it's important to keep in mind that the not conscious parts of yourself are always running behind the scenes. So the conscious activities that you engage in, like the exploration that we just did, set in motion changes that will unfold as your mind takes all of that, integrates it, connects dots, rearranges things. It's funny that we think that we have to consciously do all this work. And a lot of that is useful, but your mind is cosmic. Your mind is constantly taking everything that happens and applying it constructively to your entire life experience. This cosmology maintenance exploration and other processes like it are just a way of opening the hood and getting hands-on with what's in there. So, quick recap of the process. Ask yourself, what do I really want? Write down your answers. One at a time, imagine having the experiences or circumstances on your list. Notice if your attention feels blocked or tends to shift away from what you want. Write down what it is that is blocking or pulling your attention away from what you want. Could be a limiting belief or some other idea that presupposes a limiting belief. Focus on the interference and ask, is this supportive of what I want? And if it's not, let it go. If there's resistance to letting go, work with the part holding the resistance to identify its positive intentions and explore ways of achieving that which don't require the interference. Also, optional but unnecessary, you can play with lightly holding new beliefs that are supportive of what you want. I know it's I know it's easy to just say that's a nice idea and then move on to the next video. I get that, but I get that what I'm proposing isn't flashy or sexy, and I haven't promised you that in 30 days you'll, 10x your income and move to the Bahamas and find your perfect mate. But I promise you that if you actually do this process and then begin to consistently give attention to what you actually want, you will see positive results, not in months or years, but days and weeks. Some effects you might notice while you're doing the process or some hours later. It it might not be an overnight quantum leap. Anything can happen. Could you could have a dramatic, miraculous, magical shift overnight. That could happen. But it might not be that. This is real sustainable change made by you in ways that you can trace. Quantum leaps can happen. Magical occurrences can happen, but they're not consistently repeatable. And if something is not consistently repeatable, then you don't know which levers to pull or what they do when you pull them. You don't know what you did to make the thing happen. Whereas this process that I've shared shows you what parts of your cosmology are incompatible with what you want, empowers you to dissolve faulty beliefs, and if you want to, transform and enhance your cosmology to better support your true desires. Um, and that's all I've got. So, a few quick things before I end this recording. If you would like to have a fun and easy way to apply what we've explored today, I just rolled out a free 3-page worksheet called the Clarity Catalyst. I think I'm going to rename it. I think it's going to be Vital Catalyst. But right now it's called Clarity Catalyst. It takes 10 minutes to fill it out, and you give your attention to that for 1 minute a day. And you'll notice results immediately. I'll drop a link to that in the description. If you want to go even deeper, restore coherence to your nervous system, and develop a sound, holistic life strategy, I've also recently rolled out an expanded version of that worksheet called the Complete Vital Reset Workbook. I'll drop a link to that as well. Both of those, I'm reworking them. There will be different names. It'll be Vital Catalyst and Vital Power Workbook. But I'll drop the links to those as they are, and then they'll be updated later when I rework them. If you would like my direct support, I offer free introductory one-to-one coaching sessions, and there will be a link for that in the description as well. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for being. Take care. Blessings.